Hello. Hi everybody or anybody. I am having a Peroni and I did not cut lumps off the back of my hair. I was just joking with you. But I did give myself a bit of a trim. But anyway, we're here to discuss On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, which I just was flicking through it again today and going through different passages that I had marked and constantly just floored by the poetry of his writing. And I wanted to start off with saying how I came to the book in the first place. And I think, and because I'd saved this in my notes on my phone, but it was an article I had read, and it was either in the New Yorker or on NPR, so I'm sorry I don't remember which one. But it started off and it was saying he also wanted to say something about where the cost of war falls, not from the vantage point of the grand historical epic, but from inside the small, cramped sadness of a house still flattened decades after the conflict had ended. And then the quote is from Ocean. It's the stories of our species that men create these wars and women clean them up. They clean them up emotionally. They have to deal with the PTSD that comes home. They have to postpone their own healing, forego their own self-care in order to hold these households together. They literally nurse these broken bodies back to health. I wanted a book to bear that, to honor that without romanticizing it. To say women have been doing this and they're not necessarily these heroic legends. What's the mental cost for these women who do these extraordinary things? In the book, the cost is their own private life. So I read that and I was like, I need to read this book, and I was completely not disappointed. So let's hear what you guys thought. Can I see some? What do you think was Little Dog's reason for writing this letter? Well, I think the opening of the book sort of tells us that. He says, "Dear Ma, I am writing this to reach you." And I think from that moment, you just know that every word that he puts down on this page is wrought with the desire to connect and the pain that it is to communicate when people are really damaged. And I think that that's, what struck me so much about this book is how damage gets passed down from one generation to the next, and how when people are hurt or they're wounded, they end up wounding. And there's so much pain in this book, but there's also so much beauty, which, that's kind of why I love it so much. Let's see. I'm a mum of a transgender boy. Oh, how do I take this back? How I wish he could actually write to me with his feelings. Maybe if you write to him first, that's Asu Gemini. I think it's an amazing thing to encourage him to do. I think it's sometimes a safer space for us to write our feelings down than to actually have to sit and speak them. Sometimes it's too vulnerable. So maybe it's a good idea for you to write your feelings to him, and maybe he'll reciprocate. Okay, so I'm a book junkie. I've never been into poetry, but it read like that, right? I found it difficult to read in long spans, but found it beautiful. I'm glad you did, but I agree. I think his writing is so poetic. Just the syntax and the way that he evokes these images with simple. I have marked so many moments in this book because it just. This was one line that killed me. It's like, I am writing you from inside a body that used to be in yours. It's a very simple way of saying something, but not any way that I've heard somebody speak like that before. What part of the book spoke to me emotionally the most? There was so many. I think when he directly speaks or invokes his mother, I think that was really, really just heartbreaking. But I also think when he speaks about her inability to sometimes express herself, and so when she would hit him or lash out at him, and that absolute trauma within her, that she was never given the tools how to express herself, and so it just comes out in these like aggressive and erratic and sometimes really awful moments, and I think those were really awful. But the you know, when Lan died, that I was sobbing. Let's see. Okay. What do you think about the next reading being a book recommended by us? Well, we could, but it's my book club, so... someone's saying they listen to the audiobook and it's read by the author. I would actually 100% listen to that. I might actually go do that. Thank you for the recommendation. I love the part about absorbing memories. It starts with the monkeys, but really speaks to the little dog trying to soak up every memory of his family and having to live with the trauma passed down. Yeah, I mean, I kind of just want to read different passages if that's okay. Oh, this bit. I love this bit. When it comes to words, you possess fewer than the coins saved from your nail salon's tips in the milk gallon under the kitchen cabinet. Often you gesture to a bird, a flower, or a pair of lace curtains from Walmart and say only that it's beautiful, whatever it was. Dep quoi, you once exclaimed, pointing to the hummingbird whirring above the creamy orchid in the neighbour's yard. It's beautiful. You asked me what it was called, and I answered in English, the only language I had for it. You nodded blankly. I mean, just the fact that here is someone who has found solace in words, and it's the polar opposite to what his mother has, that she has such a limited education and such a limited vocabulary, even in Vietnamese. It's just, I don't know, it really, really touched me. And I also want to say, you know, part of what I try and do with this book club, or part of what I love about reading so much, is that we get to walk in the shoes of an experience or a life that is so different to our own. And, you know, I have never really read something from that perspective, from a Vietnamese immigrant perspective, from an American, but also a young man coming to terms with his sexuality in this way. So I hope you all enjoyed embodying and walking in the steps of someone's experience that was very different to your own, and I think that's what literature gives us and reading gives us, is this amazing capacity for empathy, because we understand another life in a way that we could never just from our own everyday life, right? I'm going to read one more bit and then I'm going to come back to questions. What is it? I should have actually marked instead of just postmarking. Oh, I know what this bit is. It was just more about when she goes to try and rescue her sister in the middle of the night because she believes that her husband's going to kill her, and then they get to a place and Lan tells her, but Mai has not lived here for 5 years. Lan says with sudden tenderness, Rose, although I don't see it, I can tell she's brushing her hair behind your ear. Mai moved to Florida, remember? To open her own salon. Lan is poised, her shoulders relaxed. Someone else has stepped inside her and started moving her limbs, her lips. We go home. You need sleep, Rose. And the tenderness of motherhood absolutely surpasses any of the problems with her schizophrenia, anything like that. It's just, she's able to just be there for her poor daughter, who's obviously in a lot of distress and trauma. So let's go to some more questions. Why do I think he begins a letter with "Let me begin again"? Because I think he says it later in the book, where he says that this is the second time he's tried to write this book. And I love that he allows himself to sort of speak in almost a stream of consciousness. There's not he doesn't feel sort of pressure or obliged to, you know, set a scene and open up a book in a very kind of like, it was a such and such a day or whatever, you know. It's just this beautiful ability to start from the thought, from that, you know. And that's I think what makes it so intimate, is that it's not performative in many ways. It's very, very personal. So I love that. Okay. Hi, France, somebody said. Can you see the value in writing a letter to someone who can't read? Of course. I think what you learn from this, and what I got from this book, was the amount of compassion that little dog has for his mother. And that even though they have a fraught relationship, and that even though there is this gulf between them, he has escaped enough or evolved enough that he's aware that she might not even be able to have the emotional language to understand all of this. And in some ways, it's as much for him that he writes this, and that he sorts out all his own complicated feelings and he puts it on paper, because he knows that she loves him, which is kind of the most important thing. And he'll probably never get to have this kind of conversation the way that he wants to have, but at least he can express himself in this way. I think that's my interpretation. What resonated with me most, the prose or the story or the characters? I would say it's I think it's always a combination of all of those things. I think the best kind of writing brings you in a multitude of ways. It's never just about one thing. I think you can have beautiful writing and shitty plot and it doesn't make for a compelling book, or you can have great plot and shitty writing. I just was really moved by it. Just was such a unique voice, and again, that personal, it almost felt voyeuristic to be reading some of this, and again, just the poetry of it. I mean, the ability to conjure an image. I mean, there's one when they went to the butcher's, and she just kind of go, oh, the ribs are just like a person's after they're burnt. And you're like, ah. And she laughs. And that gives you so much more information in one sentence about the things that she has seen and experienced and the places she has been, than if he had just started off the story like, oh, my mother, she was born here and here and here, you know. I think, anyway, that's what I think. So we're getting into, I thought I had marked more earlier on. Let's go to some more questions. Did the theme of diaspora resonate with you? Yes. I think, you know, I left Ireland at the age of 18. Obviously my experience has been very different, but I do recognize something of living in a place that's not your own, and this idea of constantly sort of not being one thing or the other, as in obviously I'm Irish, but because I've not lived there, I've not lived there longer than I lived there at this point. I don't have the same experience as an Irish person living in Ireland. I've missed a whole cultural experience that makes people who live in Ireland now Irish. And so you feel a little bit like a stranger when you go home, as much as when Lan went to Vietnam, or not Lan, when Little Dog went to Vietnam after Lan's funeral. It's this thing of being between worlds, and you're never, when I was living in America, I was never an American. I'm living in Scotland, I'm not Scottish. But I don't really have all of those things that people in Ireland have, as in references and all of these things. So yeah, I definitely connected with that. Let's see. Kelly, I'm so sorry. Kelly L. Lawston. Love this. Wanted to use selections to show my students that extraordinarily beautiful writing can be about really dark and frightening things. I totally agree. I think this book should definitely be taught at every English class. Well, maybe not English class. There's probably a few passages that wouldn't be suitable, but Red Stripes 21. I especially liked reading the struggles of the language barriers that they encountered for somebody living in a country where I don't fully speak the native language. I hear you, been there. I loved feeling Little Dog's growth through his words, completely. Oh, yeah, we were exchanging truths, I realized, which is to say we were cutting one another. Yes, that scene in Dunkin' Donuts, that was a real heartbreaker. I'm going to read about sort of just after Trevor has been introduced, but it's a little bit later, and he says, "But how do I tell you about the boy without telling you about the drugs that blew it apart, the oxy and the coke, the way they made the world smolder at its tips, and then the rust-red Chevy, the one Buford gave his son, Trev's old man, when he was just 24, the one the old man cherished, having repaired and replaced enough parts to make 4 trucks over through the years. How its windows were already blue-streaked and its tires smooth as human skin by the time we blasted through the corn, going 55 as Trevor shouted crazy, a patch of fentanyl hot on his arm, the liquid melted through its edges and dripping down his bicep like sick sap. Cocaine in our noses, our lungs, we laughed in a way. And then the swerve, a smithereen of yellow, the slam, glass skittering, the crushed hood smouldering under the dead oak, a red line running down Trevor's cheek, then widening at his jaw. Then his daddy, calling from the house, the rage in his scream jolting us from the seats. Again, it's like his ability to be within a scene and describe it in almost these disjointed flashes, but yet it all, I don't know, it just all is so descriptive and makes you really feel like you can see every single moment. And I actually, I think this is also one of the things I love about this book, is that it sort of touches on so many aspects of issues that are very current and problematic in America today, without it feeling like he purposefully wanted to preach or anything like that. But this whole section that he had, and I'm going to find it, on OxyContin, and just in so few lines how he managed to touch on an epidemic that is ravaging parts of America with such brevity, but yet such just sharpness. That's the thing about his writing. It's like his scalpel. It's like so sharp. Trevor was put on Oxycontin after breaking his ankle during dirt bike jumps in the woods a year before I met him. He was 15. Oxycontin, first mass-produced by Purdue Pharma in 1996, is an opioid, essentially making it heroin in pill form. After a month on Oxy, Trevor's ankle healed, but he was a full-blown addict. And I'm going to go to 182, where they... Using a multi-million-dollar ad campaign, Purdue sold Oxycontin to doctors as safe, abuse-resistant means of managing pain. The company went on to claim that less than 1% of users became addicted, which was a lie. By 2002, prescriptions of Oxycontin for non-cancer pain increased nearly 10 times, with total sales reaching over 3 billion. And so, in a very personal and emotional story about drug addiction, he's able to just lay in these little, bits of information that floor you, because, I mean, those statistics are just insane. Okay, sorry, keep going. These are going so fast, I don't know how to. I've read about kids coming through Rwandan war, and the traumas are similar. It made me think of the kids living through war now and how it will affect society in another 10 to 20 years. I mean, this is the thing. Trauma, I mean, you think of the children in Syria, and if anyone has not seen For Sama, the documentary, I highly, highly recommend it. It's not going to be the most fun documentary to watch, but we have to consider these things, in our lives. Do we have a responsibility as a human race to look after everyone? And do we have to think about what our own personal countries, our own personal governments, their policies, how do they affect people around the world? And are those things that matter to us? And maybe they don't. And maybe, people think I need to just take care of my own little community, and that's okay. But, there is a butterfly effect to every single action, and, none of us live on an island. Not going to get preachy. The saddest thing was the wasted potential of little dogs' friends, neighbors, and family. I know. I mean, I think it's a terrible epidemic that has ravaged America. As children, we often forget that our parents had a life that is separate from our own. It made me think about my own mother more deeply and the life she's lived. Well, that's amazing. Let me see. Sometimes writing a letter isn't just for who you're writing it for. Yes, this is true. I also think he starts it the way he does because he lives in two worlds, America and home with Hong and Lan. And in his story, he's learning to make space for those identities. Very true. This book is so beautifully written. It shined a light on Vietnamese and American cultures from such a knowing viewpoint. Also reading the book Saigon, which is similarly provoking and beautiful. I don't know of that one yet, but I will look it up. I have read his poem Trevor. Let's see what else. I love the way he spoke about certain memories, like when he said it could have been this or that or this or this and so forth. Yes, I agree. So excited to read the next book from your book club. Yes, well, I'm excited to let you all know about it, which I will in about 3 or 4 minutes. This inspired me to write a letter to my parents after not being with them for 9 years. I was 15 and I was 24 when I visited them again. I'm just unsure how to let out how I feel. I think you just start with being honest, and sometimes it's take your time. I think as long as you remember that they always love you, no matter how they may be unable to express that. We all were given very different tools from our parents, and they were given different tools from their parents, but love is always there. The part where he goes shopping with his family and he's needed to translate is too terrifying. It broke my heart. He could just stand there while the grocers laughed at his mother's. I know. Okay, what else have we got? Did your grandma also ask you to take out the snow in her hair? I feel like it's a very Asian thing to do. No, both my grandparents, I think, had quite a bit of snow in their hair by the time I remember them. But my Aunt Mary, who had the most amazing jet black, long, poker straight hair, I remember as kids we would brush it for ages. And as we got a bit older, I remember once or twice she told us to pull out her little white hairs, but it's a lovely memory actually. Have I read Americana? Yes, and I'm going to butcher her name and I'm very sorry, Chimamanda Adichie. It's a great book. So why did I start book club? Because I love to read and you guys love to read, and I feel like there was always tweets going back and forth about what I was reading or what you guys were reading, and it just felt like, well, why not create a little community? Obviously I love Outlander so much, but sometimes the conversation is always that, and I thought it would be nice to have a conversation where we just discuss other literature and pick other books. And it's not to detract from that, because I still have my very much Outlander focused other Instagram, but this is just something that's kind of connected but a little bit separate, so I thought it'd be fun. As a fellow traveler that had lived in different countries, especially at a young age, what advice do you have when trying to keep your identity while forced to assimilate, especially in the USA? I don't know, because I don't know. I don't understand how you're being forced to assimilate. I think that it's a very hard thing to adapt to a place and not feel like a stranger and feel isolated, but also retain your own identity. It's probably a little easier for me because I'm Irish, and literally everywhere you go there is an Irish bar. I remember years ago when I was backpacking and I went to Nepal, and one of the first things you saw coming out of the Kathmandu airport, at least back then, was a massive Guinness sign and a little sign saying an Irish bar this way. So actually when I first left Ireland and I was 18, I moved to France and I had a lot of friends, and I went to an Irish bar and met a guy and met lots of Irish people, and so I found myself too much surrounded by Irish people. So when I moved to America, it was almost like a conscious decision not to go down that same path, because I wanted to, I suppose, not just shelter in what I know. And in the end, I ended up, of course, having a big ton of Irish friends, but I think it was good for a while to sort of try and just explore without going down that sort of safe path. But I hope you figure it out or it gets easier. Okay, I'm going to read one or two more things and then I will tell you what our new book is. Right. Oh, this is beautiful. This is when he is writing about Lan passing away. But he says, "We try to preserve life even when we know it has no chance of enduring its body. We feed it, keep it comfortable, bathe it, medicate it, caress it, even sing to it. We tend to these basic functions not because we are brave or selfless, but because, like breath, it is the most fundamental act of our species to sustain the body until time leaves it behind." I thought that was quite beautiful. And this will be the last passage I read. "I am thinking of beauty again, how some things are haunted because we have deemed them beautiful. If relative to the history of our planet, an individual life is so short, a blink of an eye, as they say, then to be gorgeous even from the day you're born to the day you die is to be gorgeous only briefly. Like right now, how the sun is coming on, low behind the elms, and I can tell the difference between a sunset and a sunrise. And I can't tell the difference between a sunset and a sunrise. The world, reddening, appears the same to me, and I lose track of east and west. The colours this morning have the frayed tint of something already leaving. I think of the time Trev and I sat on the tool shed roof, watching the sun sink. I wasn't so much surprised by its effect, how in a few minutes, in a few crushed minutes, it changes the way things are seen, including ourselves. But that it was ever mine to see, because the sunset, like survival, exists only on the verge of its own disappearing. To be gorgeous, you must first be seen, but to be seen allows you to be hunted." So beautiful. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know that it was a difficult read for some of you, and I think if you have experienced trauma, sometimes this can be triggering, but I also think that sometimes it can be healing because we can understand that other people have experienced something like maybe what you have, or there's some kind of connection, and hopefully that also means that you will find a way through it, just like Ocean has, and be it through writing, or be it through art, or creating, or loving, or peace, or gardening, or whatever it is for you, that sometimes, you know, we know we have to let go of it, or we have to move through it, that it'll never fully leave us, but yeah, it's possible. So I should have had it right here, but I went to get my beer and I forgot to grab the book. So 1 second. Ooh. All right, I've totally left it downstairs. Okay, well, the book is called Ordinary People, not to be confused with Normal People, which you all know that I've read and have loved, and I have been raving about it. And if you haven't seen the TV show, you should also watch it. This is a book by Diana Evans. There was a movie out years ago, also called Ordinary People. It is not the same. I have looked up, I know it is definitely in French. I believe it is in Spanish. It is really hard to find out how many languages books are translated in, or maybe I'm just looking in the wrong place. If you work in publishing, please tell me how I can find out better. But yes, so Ordinary People, Diana Evans. I will post a picture because I have forgotten to bring the book up here. And I just want to really thank you all for joining. It's been lovely chatting to you, chatting to myself, presuming that you're listening. How very presumptuous of me. And I haven't hardly touched my beer. But I hope that you enjoy reading, and we will connect again in a couple of weeks. Bye.